Welcome once again, everyone, to EA Global Summit 2021. This is Juhi from EA Global Summit organizing team. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. This session is by Nizam from Prolaborate, presenting how EA is now available as a SaaS offering in cloud. We would like to inform that we will be muting all the participants throughout the session, and if you have any questions during the session, please use the chat window or questions window to drop your questions to the speaker. It will be answered by Nizam during the Q&A session at the end. And also to enable further collaboration and communication with Nizam and also with other EA practitioners across the world, we request you to visit the dedicated meeting room for Nizam in Microsoft Teams. The link to the Microsoft Teams channel is posted in the chat window for your quick reference. Thank you once again, and over to you, Nizam, now.
Thank you, Juhi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the session. Juhi, just want to confirm if my screen is visible.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can see your presentation screen. Yeah.
Thank you. So again, there was a very close call between the previous session and this session, and I think people will still be juggling between these. But for people who are just coming from Ramsey's session and kind of realizing that this is yet another cloud session, I can reassure you that it won't be the same. Ramsey's session was more about using the cloud platform for driving a transformation project. But I am going to take a step back as a person. I'm Nizam, and I'm part of the Sparx Prolaborate and the cloud team, and we have applied quite a significant amount of research and development to make this product into something that it is today. And I'm going to talk about some of those nuances and how it is today and what are the kind of problems it solves. So it's not going to be like how to use this platform to do X, Y, Z. This is about the platform itself. So I can, to an extent, assure that it won't be a repetition of the previous session. And what I am also going to focus particularly is on Enterprise Architect application as a SaaS offering. So I'm not going to go into any details on Pro Cloud Server or Prolaborate because I know there are many other sessions like that of Ramsey and Madhav and others who speaks about it. I'm going to entirely focus on Enterprise Architect thick client application and where we stand with that in today's realm. So that's the focus of this session today. And as I move through the session, these are the key points I would like to touch upon. Firstly, though most of us would know what all these are, I would like to give a quick intro on what we mean by SaaS and why do we really go for a cloud deployment, especially for Sparx EA, and what you could think of when you migrate to a SaaS platform. And we'll also look at a demo of the EA SaaS platform. And one of the key challenges that we came across while implementing the SaaS offering in client environment is the single sign-on enablement, which on an outset may look like it's quite simple, but when we talk about a cloud offering plugging into a SSO of an enterprise that's already in place, there's been a number of challenges, and I'm going to show you what we have done in terms of advancements to make that a reality as well. So there'll be another quick demo which talks about the SSO and how a seamless experience to the user is now enabled through the SaaS platform. So with that set as an agenda, let's start by introducing software as a service. Whilst most of us are very familiar with this as we are using the Office 365s and Adobe's and every other software vendor moving to a cloud-hosted subscription-based offering, it shouldn't take any introductions. But I still wanted to say how this is particularly useful in an enterprise architect space. And also as a general heads up, there are some key advantages that we can think of when we talk about SaaS. But in particular, conventionally, any software vendor, including Spark Systems, we sold licenses or products as a setup, and it was installed in the end users' machines, and all the required infrastructure, such as the EA databases and the license management utility, were all hosted and managed in in on-premise servers. But as we move towards SaaS, which is backed by a strong platform that's also available in cloud, which includes the databases and the floating licenses, as we move towards the SaaS offering for EA, what we're talking about is zero installation, no infrastructure setup that could just be availed by paying a subscription and starting to use. So that's the model that we are going to see, and how the legacy or the even a thick client application is now offered as a SaaS, which is an interesting mix if you can think of it. And why should one consider cloud? That's also a no-brainer. Again, we all know, but I'm just reiterating a few things that has made this possible and favorable for a number of organizations. Notwithstanding the fact that the advent of this pandemic has triggered a significant shift towards cloud and cloud-hosted platforms. In a lighter note, people are saying that the COVID-19 has become the the strongest driver for cloud transformation compared to any other initiatives that has been taken in the past. And we are no different. We've been seeing loads of EA practitioners and teams approaching us to move towards a zero install, zero maintenance kind of a setup. And Gartner, in their research, also predicts that almost 28%, which is a very specific number, of the total IT market will be in the cloud by 2022, which is not far away. And they also estimate almost 20% or 1 in 5 VMs worldwide are already in a public cloud. So that's some staggering numbers for even for myself when I was looking at these papers. And the SaaS platform that we are talking about is also backed by some rapid evolution and innovations that are driven by leading players in the industry. So we are able to deliver the EA application as SaaS because we are backed by some strong technologies such as the app streams and Azure virtual desktops from the AWS and Azure guys. And for what would be interesting is they've been evolving as we have been moving as well. So in the last year and a half, where we've been doing a lot of R&D and maturing this product, those providers have also been innovating and coming up with new new ways to address certain points. So all this added up together, we are now able to have a fully SaaS offering. It's not just Sparx Systems. Many other comparable architecture tools that are in the market now, which were thick client applications in the past, they are all using the same kind of framework and delivering mechanism to bring them as a SaaS offering. Some people realize them, some people just don't realize that it's backed by all this. But with EA, we are just making it transparent and to say these are the underlying technology that is enabling this EA SaaS. And with all this, what we are able to get is just open a browser and start using EA. It's managed centrally by experts, and it's quite scalable. So you don't have to commit to any fixed number of licenses. When you start, you could just have a very minimal number, and you just keep scaling up. So such a flexible and no risk platform is what we're talking about, which are backed by AppStream and virtual desktops, as I mentioned. And cloud, when I have a discussion with people who are really in some advanced or modern day software companies, and I say, cloud seems to be the future, the response is cloud is not the future, it's rather the past. or the present, and if someone is yet to embark on it, they are missing out on something big. So that's the response. I mean, we kind of see from a number of people who have already moved far ahead in cloud. And what are the deterrents for cloud? Again, I'm not going to be very specific on what are the risks and how do we mitigate them. Yes, we will talk about them later, but I just wanted to bring on a lighter note a survey that I came across, which was quite interesting because out of the 1,000 people who were surveyed by a research that was backed by Citrix, 51% of them said stormy weather or bad weather could interfere with cloud computing. It kind of is fascinating, but that's the kind of maturity we still have in a vast majority of people. So that's not a deterrent, as you and I know. But apart from this, the survey was all positive, and people kind of realized that they're using cloud inevitably in their streaming apps or like office utilities or anything that they games or whatever they're saying, OTTs, it's all cloud. And when they realized it, they kind of see this is the future. And what kind of advancements has been happening in the Sparx front? It used to be users having a thick client to access the EA repository. But with the advent of Pro Cloud Server, which is the API or the web enabler service that Sparx Systems introduced, we're now able to have the whole solution hosted in cloud, and it also has the REST API exposed so that it could integrate with various other tools, including the cloud or the web publishing platform Prolaborate. And what is also coming up in EA 16 is they're replacing the conventional JET database with a SQLite database, which is more closer to an actual RDBMS than JET, or the MS Access, which used to have its own inherent limitations. And why is this a key advancement? Because with SQLite, we are now able to think of hosting an EA SaaS application without a dedicated database server behind. Like, if we have to go for a proper RDBMS, we need to have an application server and a database server and all the logistics that goes behind it. But with the introduction of a strong, robust, and reliable database such as SQLite as the default database, we're now able to even take the EA SaaS for an individual practitioner or a small team to get started with. So that's something coming up in EA 16, but that's a really significant improvement from the EA side to enable cloud deployments. And when we talk about migrating to SaaS, again, just focusing on applications which have been in use for a number of years. Sparx EA, for instance, has been in the market for close to about 20 years. In most worlds, it's called, it will be classified as a legacy application, but it's been, relevant to the time by reinventing itself year on year. But the architecture is still more a Windows thick client application. To migrate such an application to a SaaS platform, again, a Gartner study kind of proposes a 5 R's approach, which could be the rehosting, refactoring, revising, rebuilding, or replacing. So we are not talking about rebuilding or replacing EA for cloud, but what we are talking about is to leverage the powerful application that EA is and make it available in cloud. Firstly, by rehosting. So you could avail the cloud platform just as an infrastructure as a service. So you could have the databases and the floating licenses and everything that goes with it hosted on a cloud infrastructure and offered as a service. And you could use your existing installations and connect to that and start using a central repository. But what we are now talking about is no installation. Even the thick client is moved to the cloud, and all the users need is just a browser to get started with EA and make use of the modeling platform. And this kind of fits into the revised layer where we are using the existing application, but adding a couple of new innovations like Pro Cloud servers and others on top of it to make it available as a service. So far, what we have seen is just a quick intro to where we are at in terms of holistic technology advancements and Sparx EA advancements, and now we'll be looking at what the EA SaaS particularly offers, and we'll be looking at a demo of it. So introducing, this is something that has been in the market for a while, but for a vast majority of EA audience who's been using EA for a while, this is something new. So it's now a productionized version, and there's a number of users who have already started using this. And the key benefits that the EA SaaS deployment offers is all infrastructure required to get started with EA is centrally managed by the people who are really strong with the underlying nuances of EA repository, including backups and restorations and model maintenance and things like that. So all those things managed by the experts, and you also have the licenses accessible from anywhere through cloud, so you don't need another maintenance for licenses like the central floating licenses. And SaaS offering comes inherent with all the powerful technology from AWS and Azure, which is more robust and reliable and always on platform. So there's almost minimal or zero downtime for your platforms and applications. And above everything, it's highly secure. It's through HTTPS, so there's no way, it kind of significantly reduces any phishing attempts to your databases directly, or having your databases exposed to the public or to the non-intended users. So it's a lot of R&D that has gone into it to make it a package and a safe solution to get started with. And why should EA practitioner consider SaaS for EA rather than going on an install and an on-premise deployment? Firstly, we are talking about accessing through a browser, and a browser directly implies that we don't have any OS dependency. So this has been a significant showstopper for people who've been using Mac or Linux in the past, where we heavily rely on things like the crossovers and wines and other things to install and start using EA. Now with such a SaaS offering, all you need is a browser, a link, and you get started with it instantly. So that's one significant advantage. And now getting a little detailed on other pain points and advantages, you don't need to do or manage any updates or installations in your end. I've been working with Sparx EA teams for the last 15 years or so, and there's been some really interesting occurrences where one of the large banks whom I was working with renewed their licenses from EA 14 to EA 15, and then by the time they managed to get the whole image packaged and delivered to the users, the 15 was outdated and there was 15.2. It was almost 8 months before they were able to even get it packaged and released. So such kind of overheads are significantly reduced. You always get the latest and greatest and the stable versions. So when I say latest and greatest, I need to add a caveat here. We always take excessive caution in going with the latest version. We always wait for the most intensive regression testing to happen before updating. So all these are managed by the team of experts who are doing it day in, day out. So we are kind of free from all these like imaging requests and redeployment requests and having the admin privileges to set up something, which is all been like major blockers or pain points in kind of fostering EA adoption. And then we are talking about scalability. Like, we are not talking about a team sitting in one, geographical location and accessing a database that's available locally. Especially with the advent of pandemic and work from home becoming the thing that is going to be now and the future, We're talking about people connecting from literally anywhere, any part of the world. And to support such distributed access, we need something that is, that's faster, highly available, scalable, and like supports multi-location deployment at the same time. And that's exactly what the cloud vendors have been focusing on in the last year or so as well. And they've come up with some really strong and proven ways to make your instances available from any location with zero performance delay or glitches. So such scalability can only be possible with a cloud or a SaaS deployment. And the last thing is, on an outset, one may think there are some additional costs for all this hosting and support, but in the longer run, you are eliminating all the internal IT costs that goes associated with maintaining a platform. Like, there've been a number of instances where we need to raise a ticket to even update or install an add-in or a MDG plugin on an end user's machine, and that's going to be charged by the hour by the system engineers. So there's huge cost and overheads involved, even in internal IT teams. Such costs are eliminated, and you also have cost certainty. So you're not going to, you're going to have a scalable, robust, and reliable platform at a definitive cost. So that's a major advantage as well. So moving from an on-premise to cloud is not just the cost of migrating to cloud, it's also the recurring internal cost that we're going to eliminate. And let's just take a quick look at what you as a user have to do versus what the team or the cloud hosting team has to do. So let's start with EA Thick client. The setup, installation, updates, maintenance, all taken care by the cloud team, and all you need to do is to start using from day one. And similarly, the repositories, the Pro Cloud Server configurations, the floating license servers, the certificates, and all the other setup that is required to make it available through an HTTPS secure access, the SSO integrations or integrations with Jiras and Confluences and Jamas or whatever you can think of is all configured by the expert team, and all you need to do is to specify what you need, and it is made available for you on day one. And then even if you're going for the publishing platforms such as Prolaborate, that could just be a plug and play on the same infrastructure made available through cloud. And who is this for? Like there is a belief that it's prohibitively expensive and it's only for the largest of the large teams, but in contrary, with all the advancements that we have seen, especially with the SQLites and things like that, if people are, fine with having the native SQLite repositories and no external databases, like an individual or a consultant who would like to start with EA from day one, and he or she has a Mac OS or Linux, and they don't have to go through the pain of installing a crossovers or Wine, that's there for them. And the cost or the way that it's been packaged is to suit individuals as well. Now, if you want to go a step further and you have a small team of 7 to 10 people, and you want some backups, some repositories to be set up, and have some security settings in place to make sure the team is able to securely access it, but we're not talking about multi-region availabilities or excessive backups and things like that. A small team, there is a package and an offering for those teams as well. Now, push it a little further. You want the best of everything, like you need multi-zone availability, the highest performance, auto scaling, and you want every possible integration to your enterprise landscape available out of the box. You represent a really large organization with very stringent security conformance and policies. There is a solution for you guys as well. So that's the kind of packaging that we have matured ourselves to, so that there is a solution for everyone, as opposed to a huge upfront commitment just by the large teams. And this is just some key highlights. Like you could just start with a trial, kind of experiment on it, and then consider starting small and scaling up. So such is the offering as it stands today. And just a quick look at what goes behind. Like, EA deployment has never been just install an application. It's like, you do have an application, but then you have all the repositories or the databases that goes behind all the application servers and configurations that has to be done to enable. And then you have the integrations with the LDAPs and SAMLs and SMTPs to make sure, you are operationally well set. And then you have the integrations to the external tools. That's also a major part of rolling out a EA practice. And lastly, configuring the front end or the user application to make sure it works seamlessly. So there's quite a few steps. This is even a super simplified version of a deployment, but just to highlight that it's not just installing a package and getting started. And what's in the EA SaaS deployment? Firstly, as we already saw, EA repository and license management is being taken care of. That's the two key pointers that needs to be addressed to enable people to start instantly. And then the most sought after or the requested thing is the single sign-on. The single sign-on may look quite simple, but with SAMLs and LDAPs and even different protocols from SAML, from your identity providers, could be SAML or OpenID. We need to have a holistic, unified view or a unified approach to make sure the users are not prompted for logins repeatedly, and they are also conforming to all the corporate policies regarding passwords and joiner leaver processes and things like that. So single sign-on is a really key enabler to have a cloud-based solution, and that's something that is now packaged with the EA deployment. And then we have multiple set of practices that has been researched and refined over time. We have a very in-depth understanding of enterprise architects usage. For example, if you are intending to do XML exports and imports or copy packages or do project transfers, or if you're going to do export reference data, import reference data, like all the document generation, all those intensive operations obviously requires a higher focus and a higher performance. And we have done a fair bit of research to understand the usage patterns, and we are deciding on the infrastructure based on that. And then when there's an existing practice with an existing repository, it's not just a lift and shift. It's going to be a really careful analysis of what you have at the moment. What's the best way to move things across? We have come across EA repositories that are in the gigabytes range. That when that kind of for EA users, that it's a really large model. There's like thousands of diagrams and thousands of packages, and we need to have some careful methods to lift and shift, and we are, we will be able to assist with that as well. So at the end of the day, what you get is something that's really easier to use, very simple to set up. So all the complexities are taken care of by the team, and it's like, you could just scale up at your will. If you want to go from 10 to 50, 50 to 100, it's just about, just availing a little few more instances and just scaling up. And it's particularly faster than a regular band deployment, and it's been done or proven through multiple demonstrations. There are also online videos where we have posted to say how a normal on-premise WAN deployment compares to a cloud-based SaaS offering. If someone is interested, please drop us a note and I'll be happy to share that. So with that said, I would like to do a quick demo of what we talk about, what we expect when we say EA SaaS. And this screen I purposely included to show that there is an optional admin utility that could be availed as well to make sure you can control who gets access. And you have a team locally, you have vendors, clients, partners, you can manage who gets access. to this cloud platform. And then from there, it's just about clicking a link, logging in using some credentials to get your EA workspace. And the moment you do it, you see that the EA workspace that you're offered is almost, not almost, it's the same as the one that you would install in your local machine. And I'm trying to log into the repository by clicking on the pinned project. And you could see that I'm logging in manually. So, and then I'm able to access the repository. And the moment you access the repository, it will be as good as you working using an EAP file in your local machine. Here, I'm connecting to a repository that is in a completely different region, and my EA application is from a different region. And I'm working across a distributed environment, and the way EA behaves is quite different from what you would expect in on-premise deployment. Like you would have seen in the past, the latency or the delays that you would expect when you access a EA repository from a remote location. And add to it the high utilization or like high intensive operations such as project transfers and exports would really be very slow if you're opening or accessing a EA repository that's hosted centrally. And you could see in a cloud hosted environment, it's just as quick as doing it locally, and it's available for you to download and take the EAP as per the permissions. Similarly, another operation that fails or that is a major blocker in the past for environments that's set up in a central repository accessed through WAN is exports and imports. So an XMI export is one operation that has particularly been slow. And XMI export is not necessarily just this, it's also like a copy package and paste package. That is also XMI export import implicitly. And all those used to be painfully slow, but you could see this is almost like working in your local EA repository, albeit I'm working in a cloud environment and I'm working through a browser. This is not an installed application. I'm working on it through a browser. So that's the difference between, that's the obvious difference that you could see when you embark on a cloud or a SaaS offering. And one particular point that I would like to emphasize is this single sign-on. For most of us here, you'll be representing a large organization, and the importance of single sign-ons. But this is one area where there's been a lot of R&D from our side as well, because we are talking about EA, the client application, which supports Open ID and LDAP, Prolaborate, which supports SAMLs and LDAPs and OpenIDs. And then we also have the portals, which support SAMLs. But we need to have a SSO provider, and we need to access them in multiple ways to allow the user into each one of this. So you would, once you access a streaming portal, you may be asked for a login. And then once you access a EA repository, you will be again asked for a login, as you saw in the previous demo. And if you're going to access Prolaborate, you'll be again asked for a login. So you are looking at 3 different applications, and that is not the best user experience that we can give to the users. And it's also not really conformant to the corporate policies that one would expect. So we can manage users through EA's system users or Prolaborate system users, but that will put the corporate security policies such as password policies or the 2FA authentications or the approved security processes for joining the team or exiting the team and group level accesses. All these are of paramount importance when it comes to corporate security. And if we are going to have individual application level management, these are going to be at risk, and that will be a deterrent for us getting a go-ahead from the security teams. But so this is just to illustrate how SSO is currently in the EA solution that we saw. The previous demo, this is how it was working. So the user logs into the streaming portal, and it goes to the SSO provider. It tries to ask for a SAML-based login. and that will prompt the user to log in using username and password. And once they come into it, they go open the EA application, and EA application will again go back to the SSO provider and ask the user for another authentication to allow them into the EA repository. But as you could see, and add Prolaborate to it or add anything else to it, there's going to be the same step repeated for every single application. And what we have done through extensive R&D is, like, we need streaming portals, Prolaborates, and the EA application all be accessed through a single login activity from the user. So we introduced a EA Cloud application, which is a unified single sign-on experience. It's the main intention is to serve as that EA landing page for a team, which makes sure of the floating, making sure that the streaming instances are made available as per the floating licenses availability or as per the number of licenses requested by the team. And it also takes care of connecting to the SSO provider, authenticating the user, and then from there it allows access to each of these applications in the most seamless way. So there's only one point of contact back to the user, and if they have to log in through two-factor authentication or any other way that these providers have been configured, that will be taken into consideration by the EA Cloud application, and that would allow access to the streaming portal, the EA application, and Prolaborate almost seamlessly. So the demo that I'm going to show now is going to illustrate how this is the EA Cloud application, and this can be configured as per the team's theme. You could add your logos and fonts and formats, and can be connected to your SSO provider. In my case, I've used Okta as an example, and it's only once that the user has to log in through their preferred SSO providers, and that logs you into the portal, from where you could just click a link, and then you are directly given access to the streaming portal, from where you click to launch the EA workspace. And then the authentication step that was expected here has been taken care. And now here I'm accessing Enterprise Architect, and the Enterprise Architect at this point of time is expected to prompt for a username and a password, but that step will be skipped now, because the cloud application handles the SSO authentication through OpenID. So the EA access is now being granted via OpenID. The same Okta which enabled SAML-based authentication is now giving us OpenID-based authentication to get into EA. And now what you see from an end user's perspective is he or she is logged into EA on a web browser, authenticated with their own identity provider. So such a smooth and seamless experience is all that we are expecting from the current EA SaaS deployment. So this is just to repeat the step. So that was the first time login where I need to do a 2FA or whatever. But from now on, it's all about clicking a link to be directly taken to the EA streaming application, and opening EA will let you connect to the project with no login or any other attempts. At the same time, this is highly secure because this has been authenticated by the identity provider, and it is still having the same credentials, validating through all these steps. So that is to demonstrate that the current EA SaaS offering that we are talking about is being carefully implemented to take all the pain points that we could expect in a normal EA deployment, along with the SSOs and integrations and all the other setups such as floating licenses taken into account and made available to the users for easy start and use. So I have referred to a number of videos that are available, and the links of these will be given in the description as well. But yeah, there's there are different dimensions dimensions to this SaaS offering, where you could have diagram edits from web browsers and things like that, and even the previous session. So if someone gets a chance to, or someone is coming from Ramsey's session, or if you get a chance to go back to Ramsey's session, you would now be able to relate it further, because that also leverages all these technology advancements and the R&D that I spoke about right now. So if you want to get started with a SaaS offering, please feel free to reach us on prolaborate@sparxsystems.com, or visit our website at prolaborate.sparxsystems.com. And we'll be able to provide you a trial that you could start with, or even a personalized demo of the whole platform, and see how you could, how that could suit your needs. So that's it from my end.
Okay, thank you, Nizam. We have good number of questions for you to answer. So the first question is how to try EA SaaS.
Yeah, great question. So please visit prolaborate.sparxsystems.com and just drop us an email, and we'll be able to set up a demo for you so that you could try it, in a day or two.
Okay, and the next question is how do you address ITAR type projects and objects in SaaS?
See, what goes into the projects is, sorry, maybe ITIR, I need to look at it a little more. But if you're talking about any particular type of modeling, there is no difference between ethic client application and SaaS application. We are just making the same fully featured EA available for you through a web browser. So whatever you'll be able to do through a thick client, you'll be able to do it through the SaaS application as well.
Okay, and yeah, the next question is how can we address EA on AWS? The issue we have is floating licenses and access to the assets in AWS.
Yep, that's a really good question. And you could see in my demo when I was showing exports and project transfers, I was able to export to a XML or an EAP file, and I was able to make those files available for you. So we use S3 bucket. Like if I have to go technically, we use an S3 bucket to store all these files, and we make those storages available to people who has been predestined to access them. So there are ways to make these files persistent and not just active for the session.
Okay, so we have few other conversations which you may need to answer in detail. In Teams, there are a few conversations and discussions, and we have posted the other questions also in MS Teams. So we request you to visit Teams and answer those questions after this session, Nizam.
Sure, that'd be my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Nizam, and thank you everyone for your time during the session. Now, Nizam will be available in MS Teams to have detailed discussions and answer more questions and to take the conversations forward. Once again, the link to Microsoft Teams is pasted in the chat window. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nizam, once again.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. I look forward to connecting with you in Teams.
Yeah, thank you.